Working on a value scale requires a certain amount of patience. If you'll keep your hand towards the end of your pencil where the eraser is, that's going to give you a much lighter handle on what you're doing. And all you're going to do is barely fill in this very first one. Take it easy. Don't get too excited. A lot of times I'll go in more than one direction. And I'm just barely letting my pencil touch the paper. Just enough to keep it from being white. I'm pretty much going in every direction. This gives me a more uniform color because I want this to be as full as possible and not to have any little white spots. So now I'm going to go down to the next one. Same thing, very, very light. Just enough so that it's not white. And I'm going to go to the next one. You're actually just going to keep doing this until you get all the way down to the bottom. And you want them to stay basically the same. You really don't want to have it be a lot of different just yet. It will be eventually. But right now, basically the same. Now one thing you're going to find too, when you're using your pencil like this, it makes it wear down so that it's real smooth on one side. And that actually plays in your favor because it's going to give you a better surface as you color it. So now I've gotten through all of mine. They're all very close to being the same. Now I'm going to leave this one alone. The next one I'm going to go to, I'm going to add another layer here. I want you to notice I'm not going up and down right now. I'm going on a diagonal. And that's really a great way to make this work for you. Because when it's on the diagonal, you tend to put your lines a little closer together. Plus, you obliterate that look of it's just a bunch of lines. So here is my second layer. So now I'm going to come down. I'm going to do that in all of my other ones. Just want to be real careful as I'm doing this. I want my lines to be as close together as possible. Nice and clean. I want this to look just like the one above it right now. I'm going to do that in every single one because I want them to look exactly the same until it's time to add a new layer. Down one more. Fill it in and make it look like the rest. I'm still staying on this end of my pencil. That's because I really want this to be just as light as I can make it. I want to be able to control the pressure that I put on it. So now I've got 0, 1 layer, 2 layers. So let's go for 3. And so we're going to start darkening it up just a little more than the one above it. We can go in all directions with it, that is fine. Never be afraid to turn your paper around either. Sometimes that is the best way to get little corners and little pieces that are hard to reach. Now you can probably see that this one is looking darker than the one above it. That's what I want. So I'm going to take that to the rest of them. I'm going to try to get them just like the one right above this one. I love to work on an angle. It's just such a great way to fill stuff in. For whatever reason, you don't have nearly as many stray marks. And they tend to blend together well. All right, just want to keep up this uniformity. want them all to be basically the same. Sometimes you can feel when your pencil's getting weird when you've been going in one direction, on one part of the pencil for too long. It'll start getting kind of hard feeling. The kind of pencils that we use are HB pencils, and they're nice, they're soft. They don't get terribly dark, but they're nice and soft, and it makes it good to be filling stuff in. However, they get that flat side sometimes, and then all of a sudden they get scratchy. So you want to be aware when you start feeling it feel scratchy, you need to move your pencil off. You might even want to test it out on something else to make sure that you've gotten that scratchy area off, because it's so sad when you're working really hard and then you get this scratch across it and you can't make it go away. All right, so we've got 1 layer, 2 layer, 3 layer. So now let's add layer number 4. And once again, just have to make it darker than what's above it. I'm putting a little bit more pressure on this, but I'm still not moving my fingers down the pencil. That's because I want to have this kind of control. When it's really close to the edge down here, you have a different kind of control. Not necessarily a good one for what you're trying to do right here. And so I'm just carefully adding in until I get it to the next layer of color. And see, if you're in a hurry, you'll never get this to look really, really clean. It'll look like a bunch of marks across the paper. It'll look like streaks and stuff. That's not what you want. You want it to look like it's just one field of color. So I'm putting a little more pressure on here, but not a lot. Just enough. Gotta get it so it looks like the one above it. And when I've done that, it's time to move on to a new one. So as you can see, I'm getting in these little corners too, because that's important. All right, move down one more. These last 3 all looking the same. Sometimes you have to stand up and get away from it, because when you see it from a distance, then you can tell whether or not you got it dark enough. Because it can be kind of frustrating. You think you have it, and then you realize that 2 of them look exactly the same. That's no fun, and it's hard. Once you get to the point where you're finished, and you go back and you're trying to change one, oh my goodness, that is so hard. That is not fun. So it's better to be getting it early on. Try to keep your lines close together, because you want to make sure that you don't have any white open spaces. I want you to notice too, I'm not getting my hand anywhere near my drawing area. That is because I don't want to create smudges on my paper. That is something that you get counted off for. Neatness is everything with this. Neatness and the ability to make differences in value. Okay, so as you can see, we've got where it's getting, lighter to darker, and now I'm getting to my bottom, and my bottom needs to be pretty dark. But just in case, I'm going to make sure this one is good and dark, because what I don't want is to have these 2 start looking the same. Like I said, it's a lot harder to go back in after you've done that. Okay, now I'm going to tell you right now, as far as the bottom goes, you don't want to push real hard on this. This damages the paper when you push hard. And you can see when people do it, there's like marks in the paper itself. Now, if you have a problem with getting on top, put another piece of paper there so that you don't get your hand on there, because that's how the smudges happen. So I just lay this piece of paper across here. Now, even though I'm putting more pressure on here, I'm not going crazy with it, right? I'm not trying to do what I was just talking about, damaging the paper. Because once you get those grooves in the paper, you can't make them go away. They are there forever. And that's the kind of thing I count off for, because what that tells me is that you tried really hard to do it as fast as you could instead of taking your time. Good art takes time. It is never a quick thing when you are trying to make something that's of good quality. And craftsmanship is becoming everything as you get older. If you don't have good craftsmanship, you just don't have good art, because you've been fast and sloppy, and people can tell. Take your time. It's an amazing thing. And so I'm just putting layer upon layer without pushing real hard because I don't want to get those lines. And it's getting a little bit darker and a little bit darker. And I just have to keep doing that. I keep adding until I get it to the point where it's done. I'm getting close. They're starting to look different. Don't be afraid to get up and put it away from you a little bit, 6 feet away, 8 feet away. And all of a sudden you'll look and you'll see, oh hey, that looks exactly the same on those two parts. If that's the case, get back down there. And whichever one is the darker one, you want to work on it. And then just keep going down. And you're just going to add layer after layer every time you move a level. One more layer. Okay, so as I get finished with this, I see I've got a couple little strays, so I'm going to go in here and clean that up. Put another one right here. I just want to be really careful not to smudge it as I'm cleaning it up. That would be bad. All right, and so when I'm done, I should have something that looks relatively like this. Now, this one on the right-hand side has a little bit darker on the bottom, but you can still see there's a difference, a definite difference. And if I was going to do anything to this, I might add yet another layer. But that's it. The rest of this is finished. Darken that baby up, and we are done. All right, I want to see you do this.